Hey guys, welcome back to the game room. I'm so happy to have you here. Today I have 6 more games for you that I finished recently and I just want to share them with you. 6 seems to be like the magic number for these videos. Enough content to keep you entertained, but not to overstay its welcome. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It really helps out the channel. And I appreciate it, and let's just dive right into these. The first game is a Switch game from our buddies over at Special Reserve Games. And I played about 30 hours of this over the course of like 9 or 10 days and really enjoyed it. About a year ago, it seemed like every streamer in the world was playing this, and I got to it as soon as I can, guys. But that's Loop Hero on the Nintendo Switch. I'm showing here just the first level. I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. I'm super overpowered. I had like unlocked everything and really upgraded my character, so to speak. I didn't want to like spoil anything because a lot of the fun with roguelites is like the discovery of figuring out how everything happens. And I don't want to over explain it because it'll take away a lot of the fun. But this game is like a roguelite auto battler deck builder. The premise of the game is that like reality has vanished and you have to collect fragments and memories to kind of rebuild everything. And there are these deities behind it, and you're basically investigating to kind of figure out why. Kind of a cool premise, but with most roguelites, the story isn't really the forefront. It's all about that gameplay. And in this game, as you can see, your character kind of walks around in this procedurally generated loop, and you just auto fight the enemies. You don't combat them yourselves. There are no inputs. It just happens automatically. And you basically collect cards and equipment to build your character and the surrounding areas. And all the strategy sort of comes from the cards you choose to play with and their placement on the map. That's how you give your character strength and how you build each individual build. And if you're not familiar with a roguelite, basically there's permadeath. So if you die, your run is over and you have to start over again. But in a roguelite versus a roguelike, you unlock resources to kind of upgrade your character between each individual run. And in this case, that's how it works here. You gather these upgrades to upgrade your cards that you place on the battlefield, and that will give you a little bit more of an advantage each time you play. And it's pretty cool if you beat the boss of the area, it unlocks the next area. And you can start from that point next time. And it gets more difficult, and there's 4 bosses. And they're really interesting and have some nice mechanics and are a lot of fun. The graphics are nice. They have this kind of dark, gritty look to them. And I think of like some outstanding pixel art. But your character walking around the loop is like comically simple, like Atari 2600 level. But it does make it easier to keep track of everything with that kind of simplistic avatar moving around. And the music is really good. I liked it too. It's entertaining, but it doesn't get repetitive to the point of you hating it. And a lot of these roguelike games that you play over and over again, if it has repetitive music or it's too catchy, it kind of wears itself out before too long. You know, this game is a lot of fun. The things that I really liked about it were that the gameplay loop, pun semi-intended, is really fun, and it takes a good amount of strategy. And experimenting with the 3 different character classes that you can use and their builds it's really rewarding and addictive, and I enjoyed that a lot. There's a lot of gameplay to be had in this and a lot of fun you can have with it. But there are some downsides to this game that keep it from kind of being in that like super S tier of roguelites. And the big one is that after you beat the final boss, there's like little to no incentive to continue. The game needs like some sort of ascension levels or some sort of end game where you can keep adding more and more difficulty to the game to sort of push yourself further. In this one, like once you beat the final boss, you just keep upgrading yourself. You just get better at beating the same final boss. It just gets easier and easier instead of more and more difficult. And really all that's left after you beat the final boss is just to like keep grinding and, upgrade everything and trying new strategies. And basically by that point, for me, I had my fill of that. And so that kind of disappointed me a little bit. Also, it's obviously made for PC, and the controls are like super janky on the Switch. Like a lot of holding down like the right trigger while moving the left analog stick and holding A at the same time kind of stuff. To drag and drop things, and it can be hard to position stuff, and you keep having to move from the analog stick to the D-pad. It's a bit much. They could have used a little bit more work. But like I said, this is a really fun game. It took me about 30 hours to beat it. And after that, I just kind of like decided that my next goal was to go infinite so that my character could walk around the loop, progressively without ever losing. And I just gathered a ton of resources. I let the game run like all of Thanksgiving Day. And I basically built and upgraded everything there was in the game. And there were just really, when I was done, there were just a few little trophies left to do, but they didn't seem like they would be that fun. So I decided at that point to put the game up for now. I wondered if I was missing something, because most of these games, like The Binding of Isaac or Hades and Slay the Spire, they have all this additional in-game content to kind of keep you going. I thought maybe I was missing something, like there's a menu option or something. So I Googled like what to do after beating the final boss of Loop Hero, and the top suggestion was to try other roguelites. So that tells you a little something about the game. I feel like it could have used a little bit more content, maybe a DLC or two before they decided to, make the physical version of this game. But still, it was a great game. So Loop Hero is absolutely worth your time. It's a fantastic roguelite. Although it kind of like doesn't hang in there forever. It's not something I think anyone will be playing for, perpetually over the years, like The Binding of Isaac or Hades. So that bumped it down a little bit. If it had a little bit more in-game content, I could see it, like I said, getting up to that S tier. But as it sits, Loop Hero is like about an 8 out of 10. It's really great. Up next is the last game I finished off during the October Horror Month Marathon, but it wasn't able to make it into the last video. I really am a huge fan of this series, and I liked this game a lot. I know a lot of people like kind of crapped all over it for its game length and stuff, and they felt like it was, maybe a cash grab. And I can kind of see that, but I still had a really good time with that. And it's Resident Evil 3, the remake. So this is a survival horror series. Everybody knows about Resident Evil. It's just, a remake of the beloved third game. And they changed it a lot, but I think that people in general really liked this release. Like I said, people had some complaints about it, but I think that the pros outweigh the cons in this version. It's the story, Jill Valentine, she's back in Raccoon City, after all the shenanigans went down in Resident Evil 1, and Umbrella, the bad guys, have sent this giant mutant assassin named Nemesis after her. And she has to escape the city. And along the way, you meet up with another main character. He's on the front cover, so I'm not spoiling it. His name's Carlos. And he's an Umbrella soldier. And you get to play as him a little bit during the story, too. And he kind of realizes all the evil that his employer is up to. Anyway, it's a third-person action game, as you can see. And you explore around while gathering supplies, and you solve puzzles to reach new areas. And ammo and health is limited, so you have to be careful. It's typical Resident Evil fare. In this one, Nemesis chases you often in the game, and a lot of people complained about that a lot on the original version of this game on the PlayStation 1. And I didn't, there were times where it was frustrating, and he can be overpowered and annoying, but he doesn't chase you the whole time in this version of the game. So I thought it was kind of fun. I liked it. And it wasn't as tense as it was with those tank controls in the original version. I think it's made in the Resident Evil 7 engine. This game looks great. I've been playing some PS5 stuff, and this game seems to me like it holds up well against the PS5. And in most of the Resident Evil games, I feel like the character design is really good, and that's the case for this one too. Like, Jill Valentine looks good. She's interesting. She's well animated. And since you're going to be staring at her the whole time, it's good that she's nice to look at. And the environments are really cool too, although they're a little small. And I really liked how this game, it had like a live action intro at the beginning, and the game goes super hard right from the beginning. I mean, like 2 minutes into the game, and it is, harrowing to say the least. And I think that's really cool. Another part of the game that I liked, and this is a minor spoiler, but I think probably everybody knows it, is this game, a good part of it, when you play as Carlos, takes place in the same setting as Resident Evil 2 Remake. And I kind of liked that. A lot of other people didn't like it, and they thought it was like recycling content, but I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, it obviously was recycling content. I don't know how you could say it's anything other than that, but I thought it was cool to relive it because that was such an impactful and interesting setting from the second game. So, like I said, I'm praising it, but like there are flaws with it. You can feel that like Resident Evil 3, even in the original PlayStation 1 version and in this version, that this is kind of where Capcom started slipping away from that survival horror genre into more of like an action-oriented focus with helicopters crashing and explosions all around and chase sequences and all that sort of stuff. And that's definitely the case here. That slow, methodical sort of pace that you're used to in survival horror games is all but gone, in this game for good portions. And like people said, and like I mentioned earlier, the game really feels stripped back in terms of the length and the features. And this is especially true after playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, where that game was like feature loaded. I played through it multiple times with different characters and felt like there was a lot to explore and a lot of things to do. And this game kind of felt almost like a large DLC to that game. That was a little bit of a disappointment, but it still had a good length. I thought it was going to be like a 3-hour long game after the way people spoke about it in reviews and stuff. It's not. It's about 7.5 hours or so. So it's like your kind of average AAA game length. I mentioned Nemesis earlier chasing you. I mentioned that it wasn't so bad and I kind of liked it, but there were times I got frustrated with it now that I remember it. I like exploring in these survival horror games. That to me is the most compelling point, is going around trying to collect all the items and solve the puzzles and just soak in the environments. And when someone's chasing you constantly, or at least for whole sections of games, that can inhibit your ability to enjoy those sort of things. And that does happen a few times in this game. But overall, I think that Resident Evil 3 had a really decent story. It has cool characters. And it has a lot of fun gameplay in it. And it looks great, but it is a little bit short. And they could have used some more features and areas to kind of flesh it out. Like I said, it took me about 7.5, 8 hours to finish it. But I thought it was really good. So despite what the peanut gallery out there in the world thought about this game, I thought it was really decent. I thought it was good. It wasn't as good as like Resident Evil 1 Remake or Resident Evil 2 Remake, but it's still up there and kind of like the higher end of the Resident Evil games. And I would say you should play Resident Evil 3 if you're a fan of the franchise or survival horror. And it's an 8 out of 10 game. Up next, we have a game I've played multiple times. I talked about buying it this is the third or fourth time I've owned this game, and all the recent re-releases had terrible input lag and they were like unplayable. I got the PS4 version, and I'm happy to say that the input lag has been reduced greatly to make this game actually playable. And I showed this in a game pickups video that I did a few videos ago, and it's off the Psycho Shooting Collection, Shooting Library, Volume 3, and that game is Gunbird, which is this one right here. Very cutesy. Like I said, I bought this game on I played it on the Dreamcast back in the day. I don't think I owned it before, but I've played it on the Dreamcast. I bought it on the Switch, and it was like unplayable with so much input lag. And then they re-released it on the Switch, and I bought it again, and it was no flipping different. Still tons of input lag. Fortunately, they released it on the PS4, and it's down from like 6 or 7 or 8 frames of input lag to about 4-ish, which is right on the verge of like being doable if you're going for like a 1 credit clear or something like that. And this is a shmup, so there's not a lot to say about the story, but basically there are these different characters and they're trying to collect these 4 pieces of a mirror to locate like a genie in a temple. And if you have all 4 pieces of the mirror and you defeat the genie, he'll grant your wish. And you're basically racing to get there first before some bad guys that want to get there and get the wish themselves, which is kind of cool. It is just like a vertical shmup. It's got like kind of a cutesy comedic sort of flair to it, but just like all the other Psikyo games, it has like 7 total stages, but the first 5 are randomized, and the game will pick like 4 of them and put them in a random order. And then after you clear those 4, then it'll do like stages 5, 6, and 7 are, the same every time, which is kind of cool. But there are some stages that are like much harder. Like if you get the battleship stage, it's your first stage, it's like painfully easy. But if it happens to get picked as the 4th stage, it's like, might as well just restart the game because it's so unbalanced. And I think all the Psikyo games do that, and it varies on its effectiveness between game to game. But as you can see, it's a bright and colorful game, and it plays like a shmup. It plays like it's supposed to. Your characters, like most of the other Psikyo games, have like a normal auto shot that you can hold down, and if you if you tap it, it auto fires. But if you hold it down, it will do like a charge attack, which can be very powerful or extremely underwhelming based on which character you use. And I find like in this game specifically, the charge attacks take way too long. I found myself doing better when I just ignored them altogether, because I felt like I was like holding the charge for 3 seconds and just dodging, and I was getting overwhelmed by enemies. Unlike Strikers 1945 and that series, where the charge attacks seem to take a little bit less long and they seem to be more effective at clearing out enemies. But you also have a bomb and some of these kind of like screen clear and block bullets that you can use in case of an emergency. But on some of the characters, it's like so slow that you really can't bomb in the case of an emergency. By that point, you're like dead. So you need a bomb as like a precautionary measure to prevent yourself from getting hit by a bullet rather than using it to save yourself at the last second. The music in this, and I won't play the music for you because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but it's decently catchy. It's not very memorable. It has this almost like 90s acid jazz kind of feel to it, if you know what that is. And I feel like a lot of the Psikyo games, I think probably the same composer did all the music. It's okay. It's not very memorable. And, the game looks cute. It's those pixel graphics with like the charming characters and the bright colors are really nice. The game's really fun. It's short. It is funny. If you beat the game and you get your wish granted like you're supposed to, it has like a monkey paw sort of effect where things don't go exactly the way you want. And the input lag's better. So I think this is a decent play. But there's some things about this game that I kind of like hate that really hurt its replayability, in my opinion. One is that your power-up levels, as you kind of upgrade your ship, when you hit the top most powerful one, which you really need to survive, it wears off over time. So you need to like constantly pick up power-ups to keep it kind of charged up. And I really don't like that. At some points, you're milking a boss, you're trying to beat a boss, and you just don't get a power-up. You're just like getting progressively weaker while he's getting stronger, and that's annoying. And the game has like 7 difficulty levels, as most of the Psikyo games, and they go from like the insultingly monkey level, like all the way at the lowest, up to super hard. And it's strange, like easy is in the middle. So easy is kind of where normal would be on a normal game. But honestly, like very hard is not much more difficult than easy in this game. Like there are more bullets, but you macro dodge in this game. You don't try to weave your way through bullets. This isn't like a bullet hell game. It's all about memorizing the bullet patterns coming and reacting before they get there. And it's harder on very hard, but not like the distance between monkey or child difficulty versus easy. Like easy is 5 times harder than monkey difficulty, but very hard is only like twice as hard as easy. So it doesn't really scale up well, which makes it kind of hard to learn the game, because you need like that gradual ramp to progressively get better if you're trying to go for like a 1 credit clear or a high score or something like that. And I was able to get like the 1 credit clear on this one. I did it on monkey, like on my first try, and I did it on child. It took me a couple tries, and then I did it on very easy on a couple tries, and I did it on easy. It worked my way up to where I got it all the way on normal, which was fairly tough. And I got pretty close on very hard. I think I only had to use 1 continue to finish the game on very hard. So it's good. And the characters are fun, and they all have like, you know, a good potential to do well in the game. It's not like some are super overpowered compared to the others. They all are balanced fairly well. So how's Gunbird? It's pretty good. It's one of the better Psycho games, and I think it's pretty fun, but it's not one of the greatest shmups of all time. It's, you know, it's a B tier kind of shmup in my opinion. That power-up, losing your power-ups over time annoys me, and the charge attack length is frustrating. So Gunbird, right there. It's like a 7 out of 10, guys. It's fun. It's cool to have it on the compilation, and I think that it has like the best humor of any of the Psycho games, and that's nice, but in terms of replayability, this isn't one of the better ones in my opinion. This next one is from a company that I really respect and like, and they made some really good games, and they made some kind of like middling ones. This one I thought was kind of better than average until it came back and bit me really hard, and it bombed its score for me. And I've never played any of the games in this specific series, and I know they're like pumping them out every year, and a new one just came out. But that's the Dark Pictures anthology, Little Hope. Like I said, this is another one of those from the horror month of October that I'm just now doing the video on, although I finished it back like a month ago. So, like I said, this is from Supermassive Games, who made Until Dawn and a bunch of other choose-your-own-adventure style horror games that are pretty much just like it. So the story goes, you start off playing as like this family that's kind of dysfunctional, and they're going through some financial issues. And I believe all the children are like adopted. So it might be like a foster home. And it goes kind of hard at the beginning. I liked the beginning of this game, but it shifts and goes to this sort of situation where the same characters are these college students and their professor, and they're in this bus crash during some field trip somewhere. And they're forced to go to this town called Little Hope, hence the title of the game. And, you know, strange things start happening, and the town was a site for like witch trials back in the 1600s and all this. And, you know, these games, you basically just kind of like wander around gathering collectibles and clues, and you do like quick time events as you explore, and that's really all the gameplay consists of, which is like fine for me. I kind of like the slower pace of it. And I like these choose your own adventure games, and the goal is to try to like, I mean, depending on your motivations as a gamer or a masochist, is to try to save everybody from getting killed and like escape the situation, or to like have everybody get killed in the most gruesome fashion possible, which I get that too. You know, these Supermassive games, they're all kind of like that. I think they do a good job with them. Although the stories can kind of get a little generic after time. They are pumping these things out like every year. But, you know, the faces look great, and you recognize some of the actors and actresses in this. And, you know, but you can tell other things were kind of like a rush job in the game. And it looks very budget focused. And it was. Like, I think these games are like, you know, $30 or $40 when they release, as opposed to the typical 60 or 70. You know, they're short little experiences, kind of like, almost like watching a movie is how you're supposed to interpret them. And I get that. And like I said, there's a lot to like about this game. The intro was awesome, and I thought it was like intense and really cool. I kind of wish the whole game was based around that rather than shifting. And you know, I like this choose your own adventure format. But let me tell you about something. I'm going to tell you right then, if the game had kind of like maintained what it was doing, I would have given it like a 7 out of 10. I thought it was a really decent game. You know, it's worth a few hours to put into it, and that's good. That's what Supermassive Games, I think, was kind of going for, a game kind of in that. They're not trying to make a masterpiece. They're trying to, you know, make an entertaining evening for you, which the game did. However, This game crashed about 10 minutes before the end of the game. And it corrupted my save file, my one and only save file. It auto-saves. And there was no way to recover it. I've heard people say things like, oh, you need to back up your save to like a thumb drive or to a PlayStation Network. I don't have a PlayStation Network account. I don't play any games online, so I don't need one. So there's no way to recover my save. And I wasn't about to like restart the game over and play another like 3 or 4 hours. I think the game's about 4 hours long, and I was like 3 hours and 45 minutes into it when it crashed on me. And so that really made me angry. And I was having a good time with it up until that point, and that really frustrated me. And I had to go, no joke, like look on YouTube and watch the endings. I watched all the different endings, including the one I was most likely going to get. And the ending ended up like kind of like sucking. Like the ending was not very good. So a lot of people complained that like the story didn't matter and things like that. And I agree with them. I think that this game kind of dropped the ball at the end, and it definitely dropped the ball by being glitchy and buggy and crashing on me and corrupting my save. And I think, who was the publisher of this? Bandai Namco? Bandai Namco is the publisher of this. They, in Supermassive Games, have like no plan to patch it and fix it, which is annoying. It should have never happened to begin in the first place. But that being said, is Dark Pictures Anthology Little Hope something to play? Yeah, for an afternoon, you know, or an evening or a weekend or something like that, put a few hours into it. If you can beat it, it's a 6 or 7 out of 10 kind of game, which is decent. But if it crashes, let me tell you, like it did for me, this game's a 4 out of 10. I'm giving it a 4 because it just put such a bad taste in my mouth with like that. It makes me so angry. I hate that. Make your games playable. A game should never be in a situation where it crashes so badly you can't finish it and actually get pressed to a disc and released to the public. I mean, come on. Multiple people have told me I need to play this game, and including some new friends I've made recently who just like gushed about it and said it was great. And it just so happened to get picked to be the game that I was going to play. It got picked randomly. I didn't have to like use any of my rewards that I get from finishing games to choose the game I want to play. I just got to play this one. So I have to say, it took me like months to finish this game. And it's not that long. It's like a 30-ish hour game. And man, I struggled. I'm not saying it's a bad game, but it was labor intensive for me to play through this game. It's a visual novel, which is not one of my favorite genres, but I thought I would give it a shot. I like a good story, but it's Steins Gate Elite. And this is considered to be like one of the best, if not the best, visual novel video games of all time. I started playing this, guys, like at the end of August. And it took me till the 14th of November to finish it. And I played almost every day. But, you know, this is, if you've never played a visual novel before, it's just like reading a book or an anime kind of video game. There's not really any gameplay. You're just like reading a novelization of a video game on your Nintendo Switch. You know, it's highly acclaimed. It's considered by many, including people I talk to be like one of their favorite visual novels or one of the best of all time. The story in this is like the focus. Like I said, it's a lot. This, like, I don't even know how to get into this. It's like this ultra nerd with these like grandiose delusions. Basically, him and his friends invent a time machine by accident. And it's hard like not to spoil everything in this, but they like uncover a conspiracy, and he has a superpower, of course, because it's like a high school age anime character. When they use the time machine to alter the past, everybody's memories from like the previous timeline vanish, except for him. He can remember everything. So he tries to like manipulate the past and the future and things like that. And as you can imagine, hijinks and terrible things begin to ensue. It's a time travel story, so it's hyper complicated. And that's fine. I like that. I'm a big fan. I read a lot, and I like challenging narratives. As for like the way this game looks, I mean, you can see this is what it looks like. It looks like a decent anime, but it's, you know, still mainly like freeze frame pictures. And the music is fine, but kind of like, you know, forgettable, which I guess is good if it's background noise. And despite the fact me calling the main character like an ultra nerd, and that's what he fashions himself as, by the way, guys, like a mad scientist, super nerd. The character design's pretty good, and I thought most of the characters were fairly interesting, which helped, you know, push the story through. And once you kind of learn the mannerisms of the characters and their weird idiosyncratic behaviors, they can be kind of fun. I do think they're a little stereotypical, though, and there are some, like, seriously bad anime tropes. And I did a video that, like, nobody watched called The Top 10 Biggest Gaming Sins, where I made fun of this incessantly, and I harp on this all the time, and this game is so guilty of it. But, like, you know, there's always some girl who's like obsessed with food. Like, all she does is talk about food. That happens in this game. There's some sort of like overachieving brainiac and who's like noble and has some sort of mission that they will not abandon. And that happens in this game. And there's some otaku guy who's like hyper nerdy and out of touch. And that happens in this game. And then there's always some like shy but overly sexualized girl. That happens in this game. It's just like, they're like checking boxes on a list of anime stereotypes. And I felt like this game could have gotten away from that, and it fell into a trap. And you know, there's tons of like pointless dialogue that goes on, and the main character's like delusional mad scientist shtick is super annoying to me. Like, I didn't get it at first. You find out later that, you know, he's doing it for a reason, but geez, God, it's annoying. If like you ran into a person like this in real life, you would think they were like schizophrenic or that like were a sociopath or something. You would not want to hang around them. And to make that guy as your main character, I don't really get that. And like it does this other bad story writing trope, which is instead of like anybody explaining anything to anyone else, they just overreact and like storm off, and everybody's confused about what's going on. And it's like if you could solve 80% of your plot problems by just people just having a dialogue and communicating, then you don't have much of a story. And I feel like this whole story centers around like that. You know, like I said, the main character can remember previous timelines, so he'll like jump to another timeline, and instead of like explaining to everyone like, hey, I just jumped to a different timeline, this stuff's about to happen, he's just like, where am I? This is crazy. And everybody's like, what's going on? He's like, you don't understand. And then he like runs away. It's awful. And, you know, I said at first, you grow to like these characters, but at first they're very unlikable. And for most of this story, I'm going to say like 75% of it, I was literally actively rooting for everyone's failure. I wanted everything to go as wrong as possible because they were so unlikable at first, and I didn't understand their motivations or what was going on, and their personalities were very superficial and shallow, and I just wanted something interesting to happen. But like I said, they eventually won me over. The problem with this story, and like I said, really the only gameplay in this game is like choosing which text messages to answer in a certain way from like a list of choices, and that can like open new story dialogue, whatever the case. This game goes into exhaustive detail about science and physics and black holes and all this sort of stuff to explain how the time travel works. It makes you read like fake versions of like 4chan posts where people are talking about it, and it's exhaustive. And I get it. The writers really want you to understand like that they're smart and like this is how this could possibly happen. And it helps you get over that having to suspend your disbelief. But then there's other parts of it that are like equally important that they just gloss over and take as like, oh yeah, sure, that would work. Like the fact that the main characters can control an entire like experimental facility on the other side of the world over the internet. Like, how are you going to flip on a light switch over the internet? You know, how are you going to like power up a piece of machinery that's off over the internet. Like, they never explain any of that. And so I feel like a lot of the effort to explain what's going on in this story, they really packed in the front of the story. Once the ball gets rolling, they're just like, oh yeah, just take our word for it. That's how this would work. That's how this would work. And I don't agree with that. Anyway, after I finished the game, I got like I wouldn't say the bad ending or the good ending. I got like one of the middle endings, which is kind of the ending I wanted. But apparently it wasn't the canon, quote unquote, good ending that you need to get to unlock the final chapter of the game. And so I went back through the game again. You're able to fast forward through any dialogue you've ever seen. And even doing that took like 3 or 4 hours. But I got the true ending, and it kind of saved the game. I have to say, the true ending really elevated the game. Before that, I was going to say this game was just kind of mediocre and okay, but the true ending it bumped it up a few points. And made the game, even though like I struggled with it. And I have to say, every time I sat down to play this game, I started falling asleep. I like to read, but man, the dialogue in this is just so pedestrian and like banal, excluding the science stuff. It's like these fantastical settings and fantastical characters like doing the most boring crap you could ever imagine. And it just put me to sleep. And I read a lot at work, guys. It's not like I'm not used to reading. And I've read, hundreds, if not thousands of books and novels. And I'm a big fan of reading. This game just, I don't know. Like if this was a novel, it would be like a dollar store sci-fi novel. It is, and where it falls in terms of visual novels, I mean, it is one of the better ones I've played on a video game console, but man, it wouldn't hang in there with like, the Hunger Games or something like that in terms of an actual novel. That being said, I did like the game. I thought it was really good. It has some huge flaws. It is not the best visual novel I've ever played. I think Doki Doki Literature Club's better. If you're super into anime and you really like that kind of setting, and I'm, mixed on anime. If you really like that kind of stuff and you're really into visual novels, I get it. I can see how this game can, be the holy grail for you. But for most of us out there, it makes us realize why, like, visual novels are not extremely popular in the United States. It's just, we're used to consuming media in a different way. And this is like a hard sell to get into. That being said, it's still like an 8 out of 10. The characters redeemed themselves, the story picked up, and it does have an interesting plot. Like the time travel mechanics and all the things that happen are really interesting, as you would imagine, and things get really crazy, but it takes a lot of effort to like these characters and to get into this story. And this is a tough sell. It just really is. It's an 8 out of 10 though. This next one, and it's the only retro game out of this batch. I think the visual novel, I spent so much time in it and Loop Hero that like other stuff kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. But this is a game I had when I was a kid, and my mom, I guess, bought it for me for a gift or something, but like I couldn't remember the name of the game, and I wasn't even sure if like I actually played it and owned it, or if it was like a dream I had or something. It was like a little memory floating around in here till I saw somebody else review it, and I was like, that's that game! That's that game! And then when I was over at my wife's parents' house, digging through their old stuff in their garage, helping them clean up or something, I found the game. They had it from when my wife was little, and she graciously let me add it into the collection. But that game is Mag Max on the NES, and I have it in a little protective cover. So this is like a horizontal shmup, and the story is like you're a flipping spaceship shooting things. Like I don't know what to say about it. But it has some kind of interesting gameplay gimmicks. The game is split into two floors. I won't say levels, like floors, an upper and a lower. And the upper level is like in this strange isometric view that's kind of hard to control and line up your shots. And the bottom level is in more of a traditional like horizontal scrolling shmup. But the upper level is much easier to like survive in, but harder to score. It's harder to hit the enemies. The lower level is full of all kinds of erratic enemies with strange behaviors and like nearly impossible bullet patterns and obstacles and stuff, but you can shoot them a lot easier. And so it's kind of this risk reward. You want to go for a higher score on the bottom, or do you want to hang out on the top? And you switch between them by like running over these gray teleporters, which are like the laziest looking gameplay sprites I've ever seen in a game. It's just like a gray oval. But you run over these like parts with your spaceship, and it transforms your ship into like a mech. So you can roll over like your torso, and it adds a torso, and you roll over some legs, and it gives you more firepower, but it also makes you a much bigger target. You can just see how big you are here. You also like can grab this, I mean, I don't even know what to call this. It looks like an old-timey camera that like shoots out a laser beam towards the floor on the top level and out in front of you on the bottom. I don't know what this is supposed to be, and it doesn't seem to really do anything, but these extra additions you have to your ship that make you bigger, that they also add as kind of like a shield. So if you get hit, you'll lose that part of your ship rather than just dying. The graphics you can see are nothing to write home about, to say the least. They are very primitive and very plain. And like I said, I don't play music in these videos because I don't want to get a copyright strike. But let me tell you this. The music on the top floor of this game is okay. It's short and repetitive. But the music on the bottom level is like a nightmare fever dream. It is the most insane thing. It's got like an Asian kind of modality to it. It sounds like traditional Asian music you would hear maybe from like mainland China in the early 1900s, mixed with carnival music, and then it's sped up to the point where it sounds like an old modem firing up. I've never heard anything like it, and it's almost unlistenable. But at the same time, it's so bizarre, you kind of have to listen to it. So I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm just going to say it's a wash, but you should experience it. And you can see it. Obviously, guys, this is not like a great game. This is not something that anybody's ever going to say is their favorite game. Really the only cool thing it has going for it, other than just like this memory I have in my mind of owning it, was that the boss is this like three-headed robot Hydra, and he looks flippin' awesome. He's just amazing looking, and one of the coolest looking bosses I've ever seen in an NES game. But, what are the things that bring this game down? It only has 4 stages, and they all just kind of flow into each other, and they are, the grassy field, the barren wasteland, the boring desert, and the city, I guess, enemy spaceship. I don't know what this is, but they just repeat. So after you finish stage 4, it just goes back to stage 1, and I guess gets a little harder. And it just, loops over and over with no ending. And you fight the same boss every single time, and he never changes. And when I was a kid, like, I remember having memories of this game and being like, this game goes on forever. It never occurred to me that the game just loops indefinitely or like infinitely. And now being older, I realized like, oh yeah, it just keeps going forever, and the goal is just to get a high score. There's no end to it. But like I said, even though I have memories of it, and it's kind of fond memories of owning the game and playing the game, I was not a big fan of it as a kid, and I did not play it much. Obviously, if I had, I would have remembered the name, and I'm still not a fan now. I got the 1 credit clear on this game. I played all the way through the first 4 stages on my first try, and almost completed the second loop. That's not great for a game to be like that right off the bat, that you can just, plow right through it with little to no effort, especially if you stay on that top level. You can have 15 or 20 minutes worth of fun with this one, but that's about all you're going to get. And this game looks, and it kind of feels to me like something that should be on the MSX computer from like the early 80s. But 15 minutes and you've seen everything this game has to offer. Heck, watching this video, you've seen everything this game has to offer. So Mag Max, my copy's kind of torn up. It's not my childhood copy, but I'm still happy to have it. Not a great game. Actually, it's a bad game. Unfortunately, Mag Max is like a 3 out of 10. It's pretty awful. Okay guys, that's 6 more games knocked off the backlog. We're making a little bit of progress. It's slow going, I know. There are more in the works. We'll have another one of these videos coming out hopefully sooner than later. I want to thank you all again for your support. If you liked the video and you made it this far, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and even ring that bell. Get notifications for when the new videos come out. They come out every single Saturday. And I hope I catch you here for the next one. And thanks again for watching.